Alright everyone, welcome to another coffee tasting live with your host Irish, or Aaron. Today we are going to be tasting the Costa Rica Naranjo. This is going to be a culture-rich coffee, a really cool story to tell, and it's going to have bright, juicy blackberry notes with almond and a milk chocolate finish. It is one of the many small lot coffees that Starbucks has to offer. Small lot coffees are really cool because they get to tell a story of the land of where they come from, and then they also have a very distinct flavor on where they come from as well. So in a typical bag of coffee, you generally have like a lot of coffees from different parts of a large region jam-packed in one bag. That means you're getting a whole lot of flavors. And so you can't really discern some of those flavors. So with the small lot coffees, we're getting very specific flavors from the land itself. And then also, we're getting a story being told by the coffee growers. And so that's what we're going to explore today. Have to provide. So today we are brewing the coffee on a classic pour over and then a coffee press. So the reason why I like to brew it the two different ways during the coffee tasting is so that we can explore the different flavors that we get through different brew processes, because you're going to get a vastly different flavor profile in a pour over versus a French press. And the reason why that is because in the French press you're getting more oils and more sediment in your coffee, so it's going to end up being a little bit more bolder, having a little bit more flavor, and then when you get more towards the end of your cup, it's going to become a little bit more bolder along the way, because some of that sediment settles down at the bottom, and so you're getting more of that flavor concentration. With the pour over, it's going to be a much smoother cup of coffee because we're not getting as much of those sediments, and then some of the oils are being filtered out as well. And so it's going to end up being a very, very smooth cup of coffee. With the Costa Rica Naranjo, we're looking at bright, juicy black cherry notes with almond and a milk chocolate finish. So it's going to be really smooth. And then this is a fully washed coffee, so I expect to see a lot of those milk chocolate and almond notes come forward, especially in the French press. The French press is very popular for bringing out some of those darker notes, like almond flavor and the milk chocolate. And so, yeah, I'm very excited to taste this coffee the both different ways. Again, I want to thank everyone for joining me on the coffee tasting and just exploring the culture that Costa Rica has to offer. We're going to talk a little bit about the history of this particular region and the ox cart. And so once we get the taste testing done, we're going to delve a little bit into that history. So I typically like to do pour over coffee when I drink my coffees. If it is a lighter roast coffee, I do like a good French press. But I'm more of a smooth coffee drinker. I like it easier to drink, and so I tend to lean more towards the paper filter or just a classical drip. But if I know that the roast that I'm about to drink is a fairly light roast, then I will switch up my brew process just to bring out a little bit more of those flavors. And so like a blonde roast on a French press is really good because you're getting that nice smooth light roast flavor, but you're still making it pretty bold at the same time just because of the brew process. You're bringing out more of those flavors. It's going to be more intensive. So last time I tried this coffee on the pour over, some turkey jerky. And so it's a hickory flavored turkey jerky, and we're pairing it with the Costa Rica Naranjo, and with the bright acidicness and the floraliness of the coffee, I'm hoping that the savoriness of the turkey jerky will kind of mellow down the bright acidicness of that black cherry notes that we get from the coffee. It has been 5 minutes since I started pouring. Yeah, so proportion and grind and freshness is very important when brewing coffee. And so each different brew process gets a different amount of grinds and a different amount of water. So with the French press is actually going to get a lot more grinds than the pour over. And then it's also going to be a coarser grind too. So you want to make sure that you're prepping your coffee correctly, depending on the type of brew that you're doing. That way you're getting the intended flavors that were meant to come out in that particular brew. And so right now I'm tasting the French press Costa Rica Naranjo. So I have not tried this on the French press yet, so it's going to be a experience for me. So first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to sniff my coffee. Oh yeah, so one of the first things that I'm smelling right off the bat from the coffee is those nutty notes. Right off the bat I'm getting that almond flavor just from the smell. Alright, so as I let it wash over the palate of my tongue, what I'm getting right now is that strong almond flavor in the center of my tongue. The bright acidicness is slightly there on the sides, but it's not too predominant right now. It's the main dominant flavor right now that I'm feeling is in the center of my tongue, and it's almost leaving that like after note of like a milk chocolate mouthfeel, like it says in the tasting notes. So this is a really good French press coffee. That is really good. Alright, and so now we're going to taste the pour over. So the pour over immediately is going to have less of those bold, intense notes that we get from the French press. And so it's going to bring out a lot more of that bright acidicness of the black cherry. Oh yeah. So immediately, as soon as I take a sip of that coffee, the sides of my tongue are just like overwhelmed with that black cherry flavor. It's like got a super bright flavor on the sides of my tongue. I am not very partial to the bright acidic coffees. I like a more darker, not darker, but well balanced, nutty, chocolatey coffee. The darker flavors that you get, not the bright acidic flavors. So for this particular coffee, my preferred roast is going to be the French press. And so I'm going to be sipping on that for the rest of this coffee tasting. Is my French pressed Costa Rica Naranjo. That is some good coffee. Alright, and so now that I've decided what my preferred roast on this coffee is, I'm going to pair it with the turkey jerky. And again, the reason why I chose the turkey jerky is because the bright acidic notes that we get from this coffee is going to complement the savoriness of the turkey jerky, and it's going to kind of like wash away some more of those bright acidic flavors and really bring forward that almond milk chocolate flavor. The coffee tasting, now we're going to talk a little bit about the history of this particular coffee. And so it's really cool how they talk about the ox cart or las carretas. And so the ox cart was actually brought to Costa Rica through Spanish colonizers when they came to Costa Rica and started farming. They introduced the ox cart there, but they had to make some changes because this Spain-inspired ox cart has a spoke wheel, but with the rugged terrain of Costa Rica, there was a lot of problems. They had a lot of wheels breaking, the spokes would snap, and then they couldn't transport the coffee or any trade goods. And so this particular ox cart that they use in Costa Rica was introduced by Spain, but has some Aztec hints in it. So that's with the wheel. So instead of using a spoke wheel on the ox carts in Costa Rica, they use a disc wheel, and so that's inspired by Aztecs. And so they use the disc wheel because it's tougher, harder to break, and that way they can transport trade goods, and most importantly their coffee, to the beaches to be sent over to Spain. And so it's actually really cool, the different stages of the ox cart that it started off in, because when it was first brought over to Costa Rica, the coffee export wasn't so big yet. So back then, in the very beginning, the ox carts were actually hauled by humans. Like, people actually pulled the ox carts to transport goods. But with the coffee culture growing so much and the higher demand for the Costa Rican coffee, they began to grow more and then sell more, and that means you're transporting more goods. And so it eventually got to a point to where people couldn't pull these carts anymore. And so that's when the oxen was introduced. They started using oxen to pull the carts because the people couldn't pull them anymore. And then the next part of the phase of the ox cart is really culture driven in terms of like status and stuff. People would start painting their ox carts depending on like the company that they owned. So that you can identify who the ox cart belonged to. So people pretty much had their like sigil or art style that they would paint on their ox cart. And then as people started to do this, it became more and more part of the culture of decorating the ox carts, and then people started to do more and more things, use intricate designs on the wheels, and other things like that. And then there were like different styles of paintings per family, so you knew what ox cart belonged to who based on the art style, the shapes that they used, geometric patterns, and then it became even so much part of the culture that they now, to this day, I'm not sure what's going on with the pandemic and stuff like that, how it's affecting them in their culture right now, but they have contests yearly on everyone comes together and they bring their ox carts, and it's all about art and passion and culture, and everyone coming together and like really celebrating the history that coffee has to offer their land. And so it was interesting when I was doing some reading that that has evolved so much in such a little amount of time. The amount of culture that was developed. I mean, this particular culture in ox cart is only around 150 years old, where some other cultures can be up to 1,000 years old. So this is a very young culture, but it's a very vibrant, rich culture, and they love to tell stories through art and passion, and then sharing their just what they can create with their coffee. And so this is my way of kind of sharing my passion of their passion, like just the different stories that we get to learn around the different parts of the world and stuff. And so today we're exploring Costa Rica Naranjo and kind of getting a piece of that art that's offered by the ox carts that transport the coffee. And so, I mean, unfortunately, I forgot to bring the Costa Rica Naranjo card with me today, so I don't have that to show you guys. But it does look really cool. It's got like the geometric patterns, the circles and stuff like that to represent the ox cart and the art and stuff like that. So it's really important to share with you guys how culture-driven coffee is, and how it really shapes the people around it, and how it can really bring everyone together, and then just enrich everyone's lives through coffee. And it's not even just the coffee, but just the stories that evolve around it. And then we can use coffee to help tell those stories that have evolved around it. And so that's my passion, is being able to share these stories with you guys, teach you guys about the people who grow our coffee and the passion that goes into it, so that we can respect each and every sip that we take from our cups a little bit more. And I can't express enough how grateful I am for the people who put all their hard work into these coffees. It's a lot of work, and especially with the things going on in the world right now, the climate change, it's all about keeping up right now. And so that just shows how much more work goes into creating an exceptional cup of coffee. And so I want to thank you guys for joining me on my coffee tasting today. If you guys have any questions, go ahead and pop it down in the chat. I would love to answer any questions that you guys have. I'm just going to sip on some coffee for a little bit while I wait for those questions to pop up.